Welcome to Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things. I'm your host, Carrie Roberts, and today's episode is part of our Connected Conversation series, and it falls under the relationship category where we talk to healthy and happy couples about their thoughts on relationships and how they met. And I'm really excited to bring to you a couple that I met back in January, Adrian and Shelby. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
So excited. So the two of you are a little bit different because you are not married, you're young, you're still in college. And so I think it's really important that we talk about relationships at all different stages. And you also, I assume, would have a different perspective than some of the older people that we've had on the show. So one of the things I want to start with is, and Adrian, I'll start with you. When, you first started being interested in dating. So let's talk about as a teen, what was your thought on what relationships should be?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I was so right before high school, let's say like middle school, I was actually really well known for being that guy that was like, oh, I'm not going to date people because I'm 13 or something. And, and then there was like this one girl who had a crush on me and she left me like a note and left it on my desk. And then I had emailed her and I found the email and it said, I'm not going to date you because we're 13. And so I had this very like practical, like weird adult view of like, I'm too young for this. And then, when high school came around, I was like, okay, this is probably more of the age that it's like, I shouldn't be doing that kind of thing. I started having like, real crushes on girls and whatnot. And at a certain point, it was just like, I had a really close friend in grade 9, I had established a friend group. And then in grade 10, I started dating somebody else. So it became a little bit more like, I'm willing to do this kind of thing. And obviously it ended up working out in that case. But that's funny backstory.
Did anyone tell you, did your parents or anyone say like, this is not, that was just something you came up with at 13?
I was very independent and, my parents were never the kind to be like, you're not allowed to do this or, and both of my parents, like they were split when I was 4 and they had dated multiple people over the course of my whole life. So I had a very pragmatic and very real view of what the dating world was like. Right. And so I knew that I was like, anybody who's dating at the age of 13 is not going to get anything of value out of it. I had watched my friends getting just absolutely destroyed. And I was like, I don't want to be a part of that. So and then, I grew up in high school.
I love that. Shelby, what about you? It's always interesting to see kind of different perspectives, again, what your thought or what you were taught about dating or relationships at a young age.
I was probably the complete opposite. I was like complete hopeless romantic. I didn't date until like the very end of high school, but I was like a piner. I was one of those people who like found one person and was like, we are destined to be together. And I would like write letters to them. Like I was in like the 1800s and I'm like, oh, person who sits 3 spots from me. How I long for you to sit next to me instead. just really dramatic poetry. It was like horrible. He came to my house once and helped me clean something and he found just a diary I had kept in middle school. And it was just like entirely dedicated to this one boy I was so pathetically in love with.
that one was really great because it was this one boy over the course of multiple years and he ended up doing like a trip to like France or something for a really long time.
Yeah, he left and moved to France. And during that course, I was like still 100% like there.
You see the whole journey from like, I love you right now. I love you while you're gone. And I love you when you're back. And he was gone for like a long time. It was hilarious. I loved it.
And it's not like I saw him. It's not like, we had like social media was not where it was then. He like maybe had like changed his Facebook profile picture. And I was like, he's back. And like, I remember my sister convinced me to like send him a Facebook message once and I was like too freaked out. So I had her typing and I was like dictating and it like went okay. Like I was just like obsessed. I was like obsessed with like finding my person and like these ideas of what love was. But really, I was just very comfortable from afar being like, that's okay. This is good enough for me. I'll love you. You just stay there. You go to France.
Did Did you know, because Adrian just said, so his parents divorced when he was young, so he saw a lot of dating. Were your parents, are they still together? Did you did their relationship have any impact on kind of your romantic thinking at that point?
Yes and no. I mean, my parents also divorced when I was 9, and it was a rough time. I guess maybe that's why I fell head over heels for Mr. France. But yeah, I mean, around that time also, a lot of people in my family started to get divorced, and I kind of always had this idea that I wasn't going to marry anyone. I was just going to feel my feelings as they were in the moment and let it be fleeting. I was like one of those 18th century romantics, just writing their little love poems and then being like, okay, time to burn this.
Well, and as we were talking offline before, you were just saying that you study literature and you read a lot of this. So this all ties in. This makes a lot of sense. So let's now kind of talk about the two of you. And I'm going to put the screen on you in just a moment. Who wants to kind of start about how you met? Adrian, do you want to start?
Yeah, I got a good story. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So tell us your story of how the two of you met.
This is the story of how we met. It is the first day of high school. Okay. New world, very scary. Don't even know where the rooms are, getting lost. And I don't know, it was third period or fourth period, right after.
Third period.
Okay. So after lunch. After lunch, I find, and we both had the same class. We had geography. And I get to the classroom. We're waiting for the teacher to come to unlock the door to go in and have the class. And I see Shelby just standing outside the door. Now, we're both quite introverted, especially, all these new people, new world, everything. We're going to be a little shy. But, she had made the conscious effort to try and talk to people. I was trying to do that a little bit more. But this is a moment I'm never going to forget for the rest of my life. She's standing there and she's kind of facing me while I'm waiting. We're kind of, facing each other. And she looks at me and she goes, hello. And I went, hi. And that was it. And then we went into the room and it was the most awkward, I remember I was in that moment. I was like, why didn't I say anything? Why didn't I ask her name? Why didn't I ask, we're in this cool arts program where we're both taking drama and, there's so many easy go-to questions. And we were just like, hey, and, then, over the course of high school, we became friends and whatnot, and we can get into that. But I just remember that specific moment for me. I don't know if she remembers it, but I just remember being like, I can't let that happen again. To the other people that I interact with. So she really stuck out to me on the first day of school, even before we became friends.
Now, what was your thought on that day, Shelby?
I was like, okay, that moment to him was this life-changing moment, right? And I found that out much later because he brought it up, I should remember this. And I'm like, I don't even remember that. I remember the time that you're saying, and I remember, I'm sure it's true, but that did not stick out to me because I was also, at that time, I was very goth, and I was this eccentric dresser. I had bright red hair, and I was very wild. I was not the regular person that you would meet in high school. And I was very scared because it took me a long time in elementary school to make friends, that I was not going to have friends in high school. So my family was like, it's okay. Just say hello to people. So I had gone into this new school, grade 9, and I had met so many people already just doing that, be like, oh, hello. And then they would introduce themselves to me and we would talk. And then about 80% of them just shut me down. And I was like, okay, this is awful. So by the time I got to third period, I was used to being shut down. So I was like, hello. And he was like, hello. And it was over. And I was shut down. I was like, okay, 80% check. Next person, And so for me, that moment was it was part of a bigger moment of me actually putting myself out there in high school and going completely out of my comfort zone to speak to people. And then to hear that had a positive effect on one random person who I ended up spending a lot of my time with and my life with was so interesting because you know, I was very similar in that way. I was so scared about talking to people. And then he said afterwards he would like make more of an effort to talk to people after that time because he felt so bad. And I was like, yes, goal achieved.
I love that. You know, it's so funny how we have this perception in our head of what we think happened. Right? You're thinking here, Shelby, like, oh, like another person, wow, they just said hello. They didn't want to talk to me. Meanwhile, Adrian's like, oh my God, here's this wonderful person. And I didn't even say enough. Like, I think that's so funny how we have these ideas and it's, you know, it's not always in parallel. Okay. So what happens next? Adrian, did you have a plan to go talk to Shelby again or?
So, you know, we were in this specialist high school that did a lot of arts things. So there was a very strong community of people, and we were both kind of expecting to meet a lot of people along the way. So we were definitely going to run into each other, even if we weren't going to end up friends or anything like that. And over the next year, the next year, we didn't really interact that much, right? The first year.
We had a brief stint when I kind of ignored him and told him my last name was Ceiling.
Yeah, because there was this, I think at that moment, actually, that's a good point that you asked that question, because we have this annual fundraiser at that school and in November. So it was like a couple of months after the start of school. And I had remembered that moment and been like, okay, now I need to go find her and talk to her more. And so I'm like, okay, you know, hello, who are you? What's your last name? And she says, oh, I'm Ceiling. She got scared. She said, oh, it's Ceiling. I'm like, your name's Shelby Ceiling? and so, you know, that became a running joke at that point. But it wasn't really until the second year of high school that we had started taking the bus route home together. And one of the earliest conversations that we can really remember is...
Can I take this one?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so in our second year of high school, he was part of this like friend group that was like a very established group of people who like, they all seemed to be friends with each other. And I was very much this person who like went from one group to another and was like, hello, how are you? Goodbye. And in that second year, I started being friends with more people in that friend group. And so they started bringing me in to, you know, sit with them at lunch or to take the bus home with them. And because he was also there, we had an opportunity to finally talk on a much more significant level. And we, you know, out of sheer coincidence, we were the only two people to take this specific bus that was the slowest bus ever. Everyone else's bus would come right at like 3:00 or something like that. And ours would come at 3:10, 3:15. So we were often left just like we would have a large group of friends and everyone would get on the bus and leave us at like 3:00. And then it would just be us waiting for our same bus. So it was like a bonding kind of coincidental moment where we now had so much time to just either awkwardly just sit there or finally acknowledge one another and get to know each other.
And so what did you talk about?
So one of the first conversations, I think definitely this was like the gateway into us talking more and more, was we were just having this, you know, random small talk. And then at some point she had said she's a big fan of Star Wars. And, you know, she's born on May the 4th and all of this stuff. And I was like, okay, that's great. I've never seen a Star Wars movie, right? I was like 14, 15. I had never seen a Star Wars movie. And she goes, okay. And then she proceeded to just explain the entire Star Wars plot to me.
I did ask if he had plans on ever watching it. And he said, no. I was like, that's not good enough for me. You need to know. You can't exist in this world and not know Star Wars. So, I was doing him a favor.
Yeah. So we had a pleasant conversation from the bus rides to my house that I had to get off of her just explaining the entire plot to me. After that point, you know, okay, now we have each other's numbers. We're able to say, hey, are you, you know, taking the bus home today? And we started going for coffees after school and stuff like that. It was also around this time though that I began dating another girl in that friend group from the first year. And her and I had a very strong relationship. We were together for like 2.5 years. You know, it lasted a really long time. And, you know, especially for high school standards. But over the course of that period, Shelby and I actually like became really close, genuine friends. that was, you know, completely platonic. Like we very frequently made comments on the fact of just like, we're really happy to have each other's company, but we fully recognize that we probably could not date each other in an alternate universe. Right. And we're like 16, 17.
Yeah, and she was actually the person to bring me into that friend group.
Yeah.
She was very popular, but also just very personable person who was very kind and generous, and we got along really well. So I was her friend first, and so that's how I met him. It was like through this like kind of trio of us, me caring about her and him also caring about her, that a lot of our conversations started that way. But yeah, it was very much like we spent a lot of time together alone because of our situation, because we were friends. So I guess we felt the need to constantly justify that we were like, no, don't worry. We are not doing it. We're not up to no good, man. We're just friends and we want to go bowling. Like we like going to Tim Hortons and talking about life. It's nothing. Clearly it was nothing.
Well, yeah.
So when did this shift happen then? When did you decide, okay, this person, I kind of like this person maybe more than a friend? And was there one of you that liked the other person more first?
Yeah, so we had finished school. Well, okay, so grade 12, which is the fourth year of high school, through the second half of it, I had broken up with my girlfriend at that point. I had, because of that breakup and because of how close knit this entire program was, and I was just so busy with everything that I was doing with theater, I had kind of disconnected myself from a lot of the people in that program. I ended up going on my own a lot of the times, and so her and I had kind of, you know, and she was there with my girlfriend at the time, to, you know, comfort her through the whole thing, and so I had kind of gone off on my own, and that's when we kind of had stopped talking a little bit more. And then she had taken a year off before university. I had taken a fifth year of high school, just to basically waste time. I didn't need to take it. I just decided I wasn't ready for university yet. And we pretty much had stopped contact between the end of fourth year and pretty much straight up until the end of fifth year as well. We didn't talk for pretty much a whole year. And then it was at I ended up becoming really close with this other friend of ours who we both knew. She knew her from childhood, and then I ended up just getting closer with her because she also, you know, did her first year of university. She had no friends, so her and I started becoming friends anyway. And so they had this third friend was selling at a local market, and then she also happened to be performing at that local market, and she needed tech support for her music. And so she had messaged me saying, hey, you know, do you mind doing this tech stuff? And I'm like, I was already going to be there to help my friends. So like, sure, of course I can help you with your tech. And so that was kind of like our first, well, not our first, but like the first kind of real touch point that we had reconnecting.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, like I think we like went for coffee once, like right before the end of the year. And we kind of like settled some issues because I was like, yo, were you a terrible person? Why didn't you break up with my friend? Yeah, the breakup with the girlfriend wasn't the cleanest process. and then like I took a year, he was in school just kind of like doing nothing. I took a year to work 3 jobs, 60 hours a week. So I didn't talk to anybody during that time. And I really started getting into my music. And when we did, he was then kind of like came back into my memory of friends that I had. So we talked every now and again, and we kind of like had a little bit of a dialogue because of this friend that I was also friends with. But yeah, not too much until like the kind of thing that kind of started us being together all the time.
Yeah, it kind of went from that one kind of tech moment to her saying, hey, do you want to go to an open mic that I'm going to and, you know, hang out with me? And then it was coffee again. And then she's like, hey, I'm thinking of recording a video for a YouTube channel with my music. I go, easy, I can help you out with that. I've got the camera and the microphone and all this stuff. And slowly, just over the course of us hanging out more and more, you know, it was like 2 months before we're both supposed to go off to Toronto to go to university. And
start new lives.
And all of a sudden I can't stop thinking about her. And I'm like, what is this? What is happening? I was playing her music just like on repeat. And I was like trying to convince myself, basically, we had been such solid friends for so long, right? And I had only ever seen her as a friend. And that's, and I was happy with that. We had never thought about it. And then it's like all of a sudden I was like trying to convince myself that I didn't have a thing for her. I didn't have a crush on her or anything like that. And, but then, yeah, over the course of
2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Well, yeah, I don't know. 2 weeks, I guess, is when it really ramped up. But at a certain point, it was just like there was flirting going on. There was stuff, kind of hints being made. And she had come over, and the thing that kind of cinched it all together. We were there, and we were like doing something with the hands. She was like, "Oh, look, I can do so." And then we just started holding hands. And I was sitting there, and I was like, "I think we need to talk about this."
Her hands are so cold.
So Shelby, were you at that point feeling the same way, or did he say something, or you didn't have to say anything because you both kind of felt something was happening?
Yeah, I would say I was, I didn't even learn until much later how much he had kind of been like pining for me during that time. But for me, I was not in the best place when that was all happening. And I had like been going through some stuff, and he was just like this like shining kind of pleasant experience who would like message me in the morning and ask me how I was and say goodnight to me at night. And I was like, oh, this is so nice. And I was so used to him being like that kind of, like, 1 year when he was still dating his other girlfriend, he was like up at 12 o'clock. And it was my birthday. And so he was the first person to message me happy birthday at like 12:01. And so he'd always been like this like sweet, caring person who just was like a very good support for me. And so during that time, it felt so like natural to just spend a lot of time with him. But I also wasn't like, he was so in his head from what I learned later. I was just like, this is so easy. Life has not been this easy in so long. I was just kind of like riding my wave. Like, if I have to think about this, I'm not going to be happy. So he kind of, the first thing when we were holding hands, he says, we need to talk about this. And I was like, do we though? Like, no, we don't. Like, yeah. Let's just not.
But did it feel, because I think some people, this happens quite often, people are good friends, and whether it evolves or they meet again later on, like you guys did, it tends to happen. Did it feel weird to transition from friends to being a couple, or no, it just felt like, oh, this is normal?
She got real tired of me going, I can't believe I'm dating Shelby Shapiro.
There's only like a certain amount of time that someone can say your entire name to your face.
You're so
not
cute.
addressing you. They're just like, it's not even like, oh, hello, Shelby Shapiro. It's just like, I'm with Shelby Shapiro. And I'm like, I'm right here. I know who you're with.
It was so weird for me. It was, like we had been friends for 5 years, and then all of a sudden you have romantic feelings for someone. It was so out of the blue for me. The first month of our relationship, I wasn't even like, because we were going off to school and life was changing so much and everything. I was like, let's not even put a name on this or anything. Like, let's just live the life that we want to live, have a good time right now, and don't, because I didn't. Yeah, it was just it took me a while to adjust for sure. But then once we hit school, it pretty like my first couple of weeks of school, I didn't have anywhere to live. I was moving to the big city. And I had to go to an Airbnb for the first week, and then I had to go to her place on the second week. And so, kind of after that point, it was much easier to, settle into what we were, and went from there. Yeah.
What was interesting is like when you date someone, like that you meet on like Tinder or whatever, or wherever you meet, there is a period of time while you're dating that person or while you're somewhat committed to that person where you're still getting to know each other. And we didn't have that. I knew everything about him. I knew his parents. He knew my parents. He knew all my baggage, and I knew all his baggage. It was just like a step up in our relationship of how we looked at each other, really. And I think I found it much easier, weirdly, because he was like pining over me. I was just like, I just accepted it and moved on. And he was kind of struggling. And so we had some conversations about like, it doesn't have to be like super intense. We can just like do what we need to do. And if Toronto means that we're far away from each other and it's hard, it can end, And so like no hard feelings or anything. So for me, it was like, it was weird at the beginning. And then immediately after that, it felt like we'd been married forever. Because you go and you have your first. It's like, yeah, we had our first kiss and we had our first date. And then next thing you know, together alone in Toronto in a new place. And I spent so much time like basically living with him in his tiny res room, because my res room was like a prison cell with a shared bathroom with 18 other butts. No one needs that many butts. It's awful.
Love it. So, one of the things that I think was interesting when I met the two of you is, and I don't know if this is more generational or not, but you had said, I think, Adrian, you introduced Shelby. You said, this is Shelby, she's my partner. And I had asked you about why you don't use boyfriend and girlfriend. And Shelby, you had said something because I'm his equal. And I was like, heck yeah. I was like, I loved it. So I'd love to hear, was that a conversation you had, or that just happened? Or like, because I feel like that's definitely a younger generation thing, in my opinion, that I hear. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think I've just always associated girlfriend and boyfriend with the dating phase, right? I had watched my parents go through so many of these, and they had always, even if they were together for years, they would say boyfriend and girlfriend. But I was always just like, okay, there's that period of time that adults go through where they have to figure each other out and see if they're actually suitable for another. And that usually lasts a couple of months. And that to me was like dating / girlfriend, boyfriend, that kind of thing. And at a certain point, it was just like, once we had started dating, like she said, it felt like within 6 months, it felt like we were married for years, and we had knew everything about each other. We kind of skipped that step. And so to me, it just felt more, I don't know. I don't think I ever really thought about it. It just felt more logical to say partner.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of conversation. I think I have more of an answer because I've had more people ask me about it, I think. And I don't know if that's because I'm a woman or whatnot, but like part of it is, I feel like, when you say partner, there's like an air of mystery to it in that way. Like they're like not mystery, but it's not a secret or a surprise or anything. But like, I don't know. I don't want people to assume maybe my sexual orientation sometimes, because I feel like that's kind of, I personally identify as bi. And because of that, I've spent a lot of time in LGBTQ plus spheres before dating him. And I felt like immediately when I had a boyfriend, I was like excommunicated from these spheres because I no longer was a bi woman. I was a woman in a heterosexual relationship. And like, I guess boyfriend, like in that same way, kind of feels juvenile to me. Like we've lived together for multiple years.
Most of our relationships.
And, like it became this like, I guess, kind of idea of, if people want to ask me why I say partner, that's an interesting conversation to have. You can learn more about me, you can learn more about him. But I also don't want you to just like assume that, there's like some kind of information that you're guaranteed to know. Like there's just so much that is given away when you say you have a boyfriend. Or also like, it feels like juvenile way because we spent so much time together. We're in a solid relationship. We have like life plans together.
Yeah, I think there's also something to be said about like we were like, I think the usual path is like your boyfriend and girlfriend or boyfriend and boyfriend or whatever it is to fiance to husband and wife are the terms that would be used. But like we know we're getting married. We've known we're getting married for a very long time. And we're also not going to have this period where we're fiancés. Really, we're just gonna go sign the paper and maybe have a celebration of somebody. Like it's not this air of mystery that it usually is or anything like that. And so like partner is kind of, I guess, that middle step for us that fiance normally would be, or something like that.
Yeah, and like you said, like when you say you're a girlfriend, it feels like you're accompanying someone, you know, like, oh, he's my boyfriend. I bring him around and I keep him in my purse, you know, like when you say that they're your partner, or, you know, it feels so much more like a collaboration in some way. Like, oh yeah, he's my life partner. He is the person I spend my time with, that I choose to spend my time with. And it just, we've gotten used to saying it now that it's weird to not. I think it also started, I would say, partner to like older people and boyfriend to like people who are our age.
Mm-hmm.
Because people who are our age are more likely to like give our relationship validity.
Yeah.
And you know, the people who are older than us, if you say boyfriend, then it sounds like you're 15 to them.
Well, I love how you just stated all that, and I think things that myself or a lot of people have never thought of before. And I love that. I mean, I think that's part of why I'm having you as part of this conversation in this show, because even though in chronological age you're young, I feel you both are just so mature, and I don't think, you know, maturity has to do with chronological age. It can do with a lot of different things. So I love the way that you broke that down. So you've talked about these kind of life plans. You've known each other for a while. You know, I think one of the challenges is people always think like there's one way to do a relationship. And part of showing these conversations is there's multiple ways to do a relationship, and that also not every relationship is perfect. So I'm curious, when you know, you either have arguments or you're just like in a mood or someone's annoying you, like how do you deal with each other when there is some sort of conflict between the two of you?
Well, I can tell you, lately we've been in many a mood.
Well,
No.
yes, COVID, yeah, we'll do that.
I have always said through the 3 years that we've been together, or whatever, however long it's been, I have felt extraordinarily lucky, because we moved in with each other before, like 6 months into our relationship. Like we've been living together the whole time, and never once have I been like, I don't know if this is going to work, or, you know, I'm getting sick of you, or anything like that. Like genuinely, we were extremely good friends before. We are extremely good friends now. And that's how we handle anything. And so that means, I mean, and for me, the way it's always been since I was a kid, watching my parents go, like, especially my dad, who just went through so many people over and over, the breakdown was communication constantly. And my friends in high school and like everything, it's always been communication and not talking, or not knowing how to talk to each other. Because, you know, talking to one person is different from talking to another person, especially in the context of a relationship. And so, it's just like we had a really solid foundation going into it. And then what it's really been about, and even, you know, new revelations over the course of the past 9 months or whatever, is learning how to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say like the language that we use, and like being able to know what you need out of communication is the biggest thing that we've learned about each other. Like I am someone who is like a great communicator for some reason, because I know myself so well. There's never been a time where I'm like, oh, what am I feeling? Always, I know exactly the 17 feelings I'm feeling right now, and at what degree they are, and like what you can do to make it better. And he's very much, what are feelings?
This is a genuine thing that we had to deal with early on. She was like, this is the feeling, I'm feeling it right now, and I know it. And I'm sitting there just like a little anxious, and like I don't know how to, I'm like freaking out a little bit, and she's like, how you feeling? I'm like, and that's it. That's my answer. I don't feel good. That's my answer. And so then there's the process of like, okay, you know, how do we help each other using different ways of communicating? For sure.
So can you share that? Because I think that's very common. And just the way you both talked in the very beginning about your ideas about relationships from your viewpoints, right? Shelby, you're very romantic and writing letters, you do literature. And then you have Adrian, who's like, I'm very practical. It's this way. This is what's happening. This is what I experienced. And so you do have these two that can complement each other really well. But I think this is very common in a lot of relationships. Sometimes it can be very male-female based, but not always. So I'm curious if you can share anything about how you've been able to kind of deal with someone who's very emotional, who feels deeply. Shelby, I'm right there with you, girl. Or if somebody who is struggling with that, like how do you do that? Maybe any advice kind of that could help people that are having the same problem.
Something for us, or specifically me, that's helped is like just sometimes like the language that he was using like a couple seconds ago is relatively new to his vernacular. Like before I'd be like, how are you feeling? And he was like, I don't know. And to me, that meant like, I don't know if I want to tell you how I'm feeling, because that's what it means to me. But for him, he was like, I feel. And that's how, that's it. I feel, period. And then eventually we got to, I feel good and I feel bad. Like they're,
You're making me out like I'm a monkey.
No, I think this is, like I said, this is a very common thing. And people that are going to watch or listen to this are going to resonate on either side, because this is very common, I think.
But like for so many people who like talking about their feelings isn't natural. And like, if you don't think about how you feel on a daily basis or a hourly basis, it's difficult to figure out what you're feeling. And then it's even more difficult to communicate that to someone else. And what I did is, I've always communicated how I'm feeling, but also communicated to him the language he needs to use about how he feels in order for me to understand. Because I feel in decimals of feelings. Like if he says that he is upset versus he's mad, like shit goes down. Upset is I'm a little peeved versus mad is I hate your guts, leave the house. And so he would just like throw the M word around like, I'm mad about this. And I'd be like, my world is ending.
Yeah, in terms of practical advice, like in her case, it's like helping me figure out the words, right? Because she has words that work for her. So if she's able to communicate that to me, or we use external sources or whatever it is, getting it in a way that I'm able to clearly communicate how I'm feeling so that she understands it. Whatever process that needs to take, that's the route that we needed to go. And in her respect, it's learning what these words mean to her and me using them appropriately. Because when I talk, I usually just say the first thing that comes to my mind without thinking about it in a good way. But, if I'm trying to be comedic, I'll just like throw anything out there that makes total nonsense because, that's funny. Or if I'm like upset about something or whatever it is, I'm usually in like this heightened emotional state. I'm just going to say the first thing that comes to mind. I'm mad about this, or I'm this about this. Mm-hmm. And if I use the wrong word, that's not going to jive, right? And so then it's that, again, it goes back to communication. It's that process of figuring out what are the words, what do they mean, and then calm down, think about those words, use the right ones. And so,
and like I'd say a key element of communication is patience, because we miscommunicate all the time. Mm-hmm. But as long as we figure out, it's a miscommunication that's the issue, not we have different ideologies and we are, opposite people. Like that's the thing. Like when he needs to learn the vocabulary to use that works for me, but I need to be patient for him to take the time to like, when we argue, it's usually me talking and then him sitting there for a couple minutes to like figure out what he's going to say and then saying it in order to say the things that he really means to say for me to understand. And then there's also like, you have to be patient in that I ask if that's what he meant a lot. Like he will tell me something and then I will rephrase it how I interpret it. And be like, is that what you were meaning to say? And if he was like, no, that was not what I was saying at all, I then completely discard that, which I never used to be able to do. I used to take everything he said as like, this is set in stone. This is how you were feeling. And I realized, probably pretty late in the game, that's not a great way to, be in those situations. You need to be able, if that's not really what he meant to say, then I can't take that to heart because it was just a miscommunication.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Shelby, I have done that many times, and I totally agree with you. For people that are on the feel deeply side, it's understanding that 9 times out of 10, this person is not trying to hurt you on purpose, and they're not trying to do things to upset you. And we may, as we said earlier in the very beginning, you thought he was, saying hi to you and not giving you the time of day. And he was like, I didn't say enough, right? Like sometimes we're just unaware of how the other person's feeling and checking in. So I think that's really good for those listening or watching that are on the side of Shelby, like myself, because I am continuing to learn that too. And Adrian, I'll let you continue to comment there.
One of the struggles that I've had my entire life is that the Brisky clan is anger issues up and down. And I've largely disassociated myself with a lot of them now. But throughout my life, I've had to contend with like this inner rage that like boils up. And I'm like, so like, I'm at a point now where like, that's not a problem anymore. I'm able to shove it aside. But for a very long time, that was the reason why a lot of these communication and why I would just say whatever I was thinking is because when my dad and I are screaming at each other because he thinks some stupid thing and I disagree with him or whatever, we're just like throwing whatever we can at each other and not really listening, right? And so the amount of patience that has to go into me just like saying something and then her having to like, is this what you meant? And then pushing it aside when it's not. I give her so much credit for that. And like that is just such a huge reason why we actually don't even have that much conflict in the first place. So much of this is communication that gets prevented before a bubble ever bursts, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, well, I appreciate you both kind of being honest and sharing that because, like I said, your vulnerability, I'm resonating with it, and I think a lot of people are or will as well. Being either again, they're going to be either side or have been like, oh, I've dealt with someone like that, so I get what's going on here. So you talked about kind of your life plans and your future. Is that something where the two of you get very detailed about, or do you talk about a family, or are you like, we just know we want to be together and we want to do something in the arts? What's kind of your, if you want to share any of those thoughts?
I'd say the answer to that is a very broad yes and no. Yeah. There are some things we are so and like particularly, specific about, and then some things we're like, the wind will let us know when it's time. Like we personally aren't into the whole idea of children. They seem sticky and expensive. You can quote me on that. But we're also on the same page that we're, 22. So, we're of the kind to change our minds, and we understand that. Did you have anything?
Yeah, I was saying earlier how I felt just extraordinarily lucky that the two of us happened to work out, because so much of our ideals and our beliefs and moral compasses, and then also how we kind of see our future align in a lot of ways. And we're both flexible with that as well, right? So yeah, like she was saying, like we both know that in 8 months, 6 months, actually April is like 5 months. We're done school. So what the heck are we going to do? We know we want to travel. We know that there's a possibility of my podcast really taking off and being a business. So maybe that means we're going to settle somewhere to let that grow. It's kind of like flexible in terms of what exactly are we going to do. But we know that there's a lot of different things that we kind of want to do. So
yeah, we have our like broad strokes that are set in stone. Like we know that we want to be together, and we know that, we've always wanted to travel. COVID's kind of popped that bubble for the moment. But our even before COVID, our plans were changing based on, the opportunities that were presented to us. Like I never in a million years thought I would ever go into academia, but right now I'm being offered a lot of opportunities leading me down that path. And, we're talking about whether or not to do that. And so there's also location issues. Like, do we stay here? Do we go back to where we're from? Which coincidentally and like quite happily, we're from the same place, which is nice. Or do we like move someplace that we've never gone before and just like start anew and be on our own? Like, there's so many questions that we have that especially COVID has kind of like blared in our face recently. And especially the fact that, you know, we've been relying on this. Oh, we have so much more time. We got 2 more years. We got, you know, 3 months.
Well, and you're so young. I mean, so much does change, but I think what you're talking about again is you're doing it together as a team, as partners, and that's definitely what matters. Shelby, what is one thing that Adrian has done for you in the last week or so that really showed that he loved and cared for you?
Oh, wow. Well,
This is, by the way, this is a hard question because I'm assuming for both of us, because the last 7 months of our life have been the exact same thing every single day.
Well, same. I don't know what day it is since March 13th,
Yeah.
so I get it. All right, so we'll say during COVID if we don't know time frames.
yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know when this happened. You know, some of like I never rationally question his love for me, which is like one of the nicest things. I irrationally question it all the time because I struggle with mental health issues. But, you know, I come from a family who experienced like a variety of mental health situations. And one of the moments that like I was just absolutely realized how much, you know, he loves and cares for me is like one of the things that we've struggled with over the years is like I have the capacity to love a lot of people, and I love my family so much. Like my mom and my sister and I have been through like so much together that like I love them, and it's like incomparable to it, like any other kind of love. You know, like the love I have for him is like not comparable to the love I have for them. And you know, he's a little jealous, but whatever. And we've been so busy, and I've been so busy that I had come home from work and I had to paint something for my class. And I was tired and I was painting. It was like 8:00 and we were talking, and he like had my phone. And he saw that like my family was texting me and that there was like something going on. And he was like, he was simultaneously like letting me know what was going on, but also monitoring the situation. And then so he was like, no, you need to get involved now. It's reached a point. And so I got involved and I called my family. And then, you know, stuff was happening and I needed to call my mom, but I was on the phone with someone else. And so he's like, she can call me. So he just like went on the phone with my mom for, you know, half an hour, went on a walk and just, you know, helped it, like responded to her like he would have responded to me if I was in trouble, you know, if I needed help. And, you know, because he knows how important those people are to me, he's like adopted that they're also important to him as well. And, you know, the care that he has for me extends to the care that he has for them. And so that was like a huge thing for me, because if he wasn't there, there's like no way I would have gotten through that without like a huge, maybe like an aneurysm or something. And because of all the work I had to do. But he was like, you know, we'll message your professors, just deal with your family, deal with your issues, and we'll, you know, it's fine. And like that voice saying, oh, it's gonna be okay. And then also I'm actively helping you by like relieving some stress by talking to a family member or like going for a walk. It's like, it just shows me that like he's in it, you know, like It's not just, you know, we go and for walks and say we love you. It's like, no, he wants to help any issue that I have, which I really appreciate.
I love that. Adrian, what about you? What's something Shelby's done for you recently that made you realize how much she cares and loves for you?
I don't know if there's a specific.
Or you appreciate it.
Yeah. The thing that has really stuck out to me, especially in the last 9 months of COVID or whatever, is like my I mentioned before the anger issues with my family, and all through high school, I always really prided myself. Well, not prided myself, but I had always said that I was very lucky to not have mental health issues. I was always, and my girlfriend at the time was going through a lot of struggles as well. And so I had seen that and been like, I'm so glad that I don't have to deal with that myself, go through that turmoil. And, it wasn't, we started dating, and I'm sure I said some of that in the beginning. And then as time goes on, like, there's these very real problems that I have had to process and go through. And, and especially when it comes to, I present myself to an audience of a few thousand people every single day. I'm kind of put in this spotlight that makes you go through a lot of emotions in that process, through people interacting with you, to the responsibilities that you feel about having, like that. So anyway, just her consistently being there to say, no matter what it is you're feeling, it's okay. And no matter what the problem is, we're going to get through it. And don't just tuck these things away under a rug and pretend that they don't exist, because that's not going to help. Has been just like life-changing in a way, honestly. Let alone in the last, when we're isolated the way that we are, and so many things are changing, like those ups and downs are so much more dramatic. Right. And so just to have somebody there that's constantly like at the ready has been, incredible.
It's beautiful. I love this question for each couple. And I think, again, what's interesting to note here, right? We learned from the very beginning of this conversation, Adrian tends to be more practical. Shelby tends to be more feeling deeply. You both talked about that can create conflict in some ways. And so you learn to communicate. And yet at the same time, that's how you support each other, right? You're kind of her rock and saying, hey, it's going to be fine. Let me handle this stuff. When she gets emotional, and when he needs the emotion, you're there. And so it shows how it's just like a really nice mix. And I love that you both just shared that. Do either of you have, again, I know you're young, and but even for people your age, do you have any advice for those that are trying to find their partner? What should they be looking for? How do they know, like, this could be the person?
I have advice for a young woman. I feel like before Adrian, and before, I'm so happy to be in like the relationship that I am. I have seen time and again young women enter into their first relationship, and because they don't know like what they deserve, i.e. to be treated like a human being and to be respected. Mm-hmm. Like, so often what you accept for yourself is based on your first relationship in some way. It sets your standard. And, if I had been lucky enough to have Adrian as my first relationship, I would have been like the luckiest girl in the world. But also, if we ever broke up, I would have been like so screwed over. I would be like, there's no one like him ever. But that's not true. But my standards would be very high. But yeah, like I and a lot of young women I know have had the unfortunate experience of entering to their first relationship, and that person kind of taking advantage of that naivete, and then you exit that relationship and you're like, oh, I just want to be respected. I just want people to treat me like a human and respect my time and my who I am, not look at me and want one thing and that's it. And
that was actually one of our in that period before we started dating. It was like after one of our open mics. It was late at night in the car in the driveway of my house, and that was one of the things she said. I just want to be like, I just want people to have like respect for me or something like this. And that's asking too much. And I'm like, no, that's not asking too much. that's like the baseline. And then you go up from there. And
yes.
100%. Yeah. And like, yes. I feel like, to a certain extent, I was taught like the things to say if someone's like gonna manipulate you or something. Mm-hmm. But when you're in the moment and it's just you and a manipulator, it's very difficult to be like, well, TV says. And then when this person's like, no, that's not true, I'm right, and you're like, oh, okay. I feel like, as a young woman, you need to understand that you deserve human decency, and that your worth is not defined by the person that you're with. And people say you need to love yourself before you can love someone else, and I don't think that's true. I think that it's very difficult to love yourself entirely, and it doesn't affect your ability to love other people. But I think that you need to learn the love that you deserve, and learn to learn what you deserve, and then hold yourself to it. And if you can't go to like Tim Hortons, or I guess you don't have that in America, if you can't go to McDonald's and be like, oh, well, I asked for a coffee with 2 milk and 1 sugar, and they gave me iced tea. Like, if you can't go back and be like, no, I this is what I wanted, like, question whether or not you would have the ability to like say no to someone who you love and care about, who is now pressuring you to do something you don't want to do. And like, that was something I struggled with. And I feel like we don't teach young men not to do that. And that's, again, my like secondary advice is just like respect people and live your life and treat people how you would want to be treated, and don't like pressure people, and don't disrespect people, and because it's very damaging.
Yes. Yes. Adrian, any advice or follow up on that?
Yeah. So my personal experience is that, I lucked into 2 extremely healthy relationships with people who were my friends. So in terms of that practical, like, how are you going to find somebody, or how, that, but with that being said, I watched both of my parents go through a lot. I watched a lot of my friends go through a lot. The breakdown always comes at the communication level, and sticking with people longer than you should. And so in that same way, knowing your own self-worth, or knowing what you want and sticking with that, and whatever it is. A lot of my parents' breakdowns came from the fact that they were just with the wrong person, and they weren't ready to give it up. Right. And so I think in that respect, it's like, once you do have somebody, make sure, like, if that person is right for you, then great, you've made it. But if it's not, don't feel like you need to hold on to it just because, oh, I'm going to be lonely otherwise, or, oh, I'm scared to break up with someone, or whatever it is, because in the long term, you're going to be infinitely unhappier in that case. Right. And so, yeah, I mean, outside of that, like I said, I watched it so much. It really is, if you're going on Tinder, or if you're, however it is you're finding people, it really is a numbers game at that point, where you're just like, meet the person, and if it works out, great. But if it doesn't, don't hang around.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, like, try to communicate. And if you struggle with communication in your relationship, the one thing that I recommended to a friend recently who asked me about that is try to communicate more than just negative things. If communicating is not natural for you in any way, a lot of people associate communication in a relationship, in a regular relationship that wouldn't have communication, with there's an issue and I need to tell you about something that you're doing wrong, or we're going to have a fight, or, and communication shouldn't be like something you're scared of. It shouldn't be a taboo. Like, I am so brutally honest with him that like, I can't lie about whether or not I had like a chocolate bar. I'm like, I didn't want to have it, but I did. And then I tell him like, and I understand that's not for everyone, and everyone needs to know their boundaries and whatnot. But, try and like, I like it when you do this, or when you do this, it makes me very relieved, or I'm feeling this way right now. It doesn't affect you in any way. Just wanted to let you know. And like, it gets you used to the idea of communicating, and it opens you up to like wanting to share more than just, why didn't you do the dishes? Or why is there a spot on the floor? Or put that away? Or, why'd you sleep with my cousin? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. I think it was a class I took a while ago said, for they were talking about marriages or long-term relationships. I think it was 7-1. So 7 positive things for every 1 negative. That there just needs to be a lot more. I think you're right. So many people think about communication as a negative, but yeah, tell them like we just did, what did you do for something recently that I really appreciated or really made me feel good? Like everyone loves hearing positivity. Yeah. Like who doesn't want to hear, oh, I know I did something well, like whether you're professional or personal. So I agree. Where can people, if they want to connect with either of you, if you want to give out that information on social media, or Adrian has an amazing podcast. If you're into the gaming space, he is killing it over there. So if either of you want to give ways that people can connect with you, go for it.
Do you have anything?
Well, I'm Shelby Shapiro on Twitter, and I'm always trying to get my Twitter out there because I think it's hilarious. I post a lot of puns. So if you don't like puns, then sorry.
Perfect. I like it.
And then if you look up Shelby Shapiro on YouTube, I believe I have a YouTube for where some of my music is. I've been in school for the past 4 years, so it's been a little inactive, but who knows? I might like bring it back again.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, I'm glad to learn that. I didn't know before we met that you were a singer, so I'm excited that you do that too. And Adrian, what about you?
Yeah, I have a daily 5-minute podcast talking about video game news every single day. It's also in ALEXA flash briefings. So if you like video games and you want to get caught up on the news while you make your coffee in the morning, boy, have I got the show for you. It's called The Gaming Observer. You can go to thegamingobserver.com or just search The Gaming Observer anywhere and you'll find it.
I love it. Well, I thank you both for being here, sharing your story, sharing your vulnerability, providing some advice. I greatly appreciate it. And I'm excited to hear your future plans as they come to fruition. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.